it's like, it takes a certain level of delusion.
Yes.
To like believe that it's going to work out.
Yeah.
And I do need to be a little delulu.
Here's something I've been hearing a lot in my comments. When you're AuDHD and struggling in a corporate job, sometimes self-employment isn't a dream, it's medically necessary. If you've been like me and searching for a job and applying and just not seeing many results, or maybe you've been in a role that no longer feels like it aligns with your autistic and/or ADHD needs. So how do we know when it's time to seek out self-employment? And how do we even begin something that feels so daunting? Hi, I'm Brett the Audi Boss, and on this channel we talk about ADHD and autism in the workplace. I have a formal diagnosis of ADHD and autism, AuDHD, and I have over 12 years leadership training and management experience. And I work to help individuals and workplaces become more neuro-inclusive. And in doing so, I needed to become self-employed. But I'm also still really new at being self-employed, and I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to be doing. So I turned to my friend, Liora. Liora is the founder of Colorful Futures, a neurodivergent, queer-run HR and career consulting business. They spent years on the other side of the hiring table as a recruiter before building their own business. Coming up on July 16th at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, Liora and their colleague Caitlin Fisher are running a 90-minute workshop called the Entrepreneurial Horizon Workshop. And it's for anyone in a similar place who are feeling kind of stuck. Maybe you've had an idea that you can't stop thinking about, and you just don't know how to actually build it yet. We'll get into all the details about the workshop and the event and everything that's coming up in just a moment, but spoiler, it's very affordable. But first, Liora and I started our conversation around where I was feeling my frustrations with the hiring process and how that led me to make the decision to go self-employed.
Probably about a full month ago now, I went fully all in on trying to do this full time. I had been, since our last conversation, I have applied to like 8 bajillion jobs.
Yeah.
I've hit AI wall after AI wall. I've probably had 3 or 4 informational interviews that haven't advanced to a second stage. And, after like 150 applications, it gets to a point where you're just like, I've got this idea. I'm doing this thing. I'm doing it as a side hustle. I really love putting my energy into this. This is where my passion is. And I'm looking at job description after job description going, oh God, do I really want to do that right now? When I'm having so much more creative energy doing this.
Yeah.
So I saw your email and I thought, I got to sign up for this workshop because I don't know anything. And that's part of the intimidation of why I waited so long. So I guess my first question is what is that moment? Because I'm scared, I'm nervous, I don't know if I made the right decision, but what is that moment for us where it's like, okay, it's go time. Let's give it a shot.
I think it changes for every person, right? Like that's the hard part of it is there's not like a prescription, right? But like for you, it was, you were laid off. The job market is a dumpster fire right now.
Yeah.
And you already had this thing going. So it's like, well, I can keep grinding on this job search and see what happens, or I can just go and put more energy into what I've been doing.
Yeah.
For me, it was similar, but I was laid off and also in a job market that was very hard for recruiters. And so I was in because my dad had just passed, this was years ago, I was in a financial position where I'm like, I have a bit of a buffer. Let me see if like this idea I've been having can come to life. So I had a bit of privilege in that I had a runway and I had the flexibility financially to kind of make that happen. And then for some people, like you've been in a job for years, or maybe like the time you can spend in a job keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. We go through the cycles of burnout where like your first job is 4 years, your next job you're there for 2. And just this time where we can kind of put up with it starts to shrink. And there's a point in which it's like, do I want to keep like riding this hamster wheel or do I want to get off the ride?
Yeah.
And for me, like there were times where I thought about going back to corporate, or I even had a contract recently back in recruiting. And after a few months, I was like, do I want to stay? Like, it kind of just made me remember the reasons why I chose self-employment in the first place. Now, capitalism being what it is, I still look for contracts. I still look for other work. Also because I like to stay sort of one foot into recruiting. So I know what's happening in that world. It's not a matter of like waiting till you feel ready. It's kind of like, what's happening in my mind, my body? Like, how long can I put up with this? And then sometimes it's also you have this idea that you just can't stop thinking about.
Yeah.
And I think that's also where it's like, maybe if you do have a job, you can kind of start putting a little bit of time into this other thing. But there's all these different signals, and it's unique for everyone, especially in this job market. If people, are having a hard time getting a job, I honestly feel that the risk is similar. It's just like different types of hard that you're navigating.
It feels to me that late diagnosis is also a bit of a trigger.
Yeah.
Because when you've been in the job market, or when you've been in a long-term job, in particular a corporate job, and then you start to realize what your needs are, and when you go through the process of a diagnosis later in life, later in your career, and you start to go, oh, this thing is really taxing on me. I need this adjustment, or I need this accommodation, or I need these things to change for me to actually get out of burnout, survive the job world. And sometimes self-employment's the only option. That seems to be probably, I'm sure in your videos too, that's probably the most consistent comment I get across my videos is people saying, I got one just this morning saying self-employment's the only option for me because of how I need to accommodate my autism and my ADHD.
So common. And that's how it is for me too. It's just like the more I learned about my brain and how it worked, the more I learned about even my nervous system and what I needed. It was like, I can't realistically get all of this accommodated for in a full-time job in a corporate company. I wish it weren't the case. And I'm sure there's some jobs where that isn't the case, but I just find it so much easier for me to meet myself where I am day to day if I control that whole schedule.
Yeah.
And if I can control, like, this day I do this kind of work, this day I do this kind of work, and there's no surprises. I mean, things happen, but for the most part, it's like I can decide, oh, these days I don't take calls or I barely talk to anyone. And like I can just do my heads down work. And if I need to take a nap, I could take a nap.
Seriously, that's the best part.
like if I want to like have some horizontal time, I can have some horizontal time.
If I have a particularly hard morning and I'm like, I need like 10 minutes to just go take a nap, I don't feel as guilty when I'm self-employed versus, it's great. That part's great.
It takes a while. I felt it took a while for me to accept that and like let go of the 40-hour a week, 9 to 5 mindset, a lot of therapy.
Yeah.
But, and I find myself still like 3.5 years into it. Like that last weekend, or a week or two ago, I had recently come back from vacation. It was a Monday. Jet lag, time zones were all messed up. And it was like 2 p.m. and I hadn't started my day yet. And I'm like, why do I feel this like slight pressure, this anxiety? And I'm like, I don't need to be feeling this way. Like I just got dressed, grabbed my computer, went to a coffee shop and worked for 2 hours. And I'm like, like, it doesn't need to be that serious, but like, I wouldn't be able to have that flexibility if I worked elsewhere.
That's the thing. Like I'm still working my way through like work guilt. Like, I feel like there's some pressure that someone else is putting on me that I got to show up and be in a particular way. Yeah. But I'm like, it's just you. It's just, you're your own boss. Like, you're the one putting that pressure on yourself. Let it go. And I'm like, but I can't. So there's the all or nothing feeling. You kind of noted it a little bit ago about how you still will pick up an occasional freelance gig or you'll step back into things. And that's one of the things that I've sort of struggled with is a little bit of, am I failing if I have to do that? But also, I don't know where I am as I'm starting, so I'm trying to figure all this out. So I'm not going to be, there's a little bit of magical thinking that when I start, everything's just going to fall into place. and then it's all or nothing. You have to do everything at once for it to work, but we don't have to do that, right?
No, no. And for like, there was definitely a moment where in my personal life, like I went through a divorce at this point, like a year and a half ago. I have a mortgage. So there's like financial pressure.
Yeah.
And so there was a point where I was like, do I need to go back to work full time? Am I looking for contracts? Do I need to go work at a coffee shop to pay the bills? And this is coming from someone who like had the coffee shop manager job, so it's like in a lot of ways, I was like, am I going backwards? Like what's happening? And at a certain point, I just thought like, it's not backward. It's an active choice because, when I took this recruiting contract, I realized like there were things that I could get out of it. I could get back into recruiting. I could learn what's happening right now on the other side of things in this present time, give me peace of mind. And it was 1099. So it was all filtered through my business. And I got to pay my team and kind of experiment with some things without the pressure of the finances. But then I got through that and I was like, okay, now I'm back to my business and like all of that. But it was a stressful few months.
Yeah.
So to work 40 hours again and also be in my business, but it was different and there were reasons behind it. And so that's something that I've learned. It's like, we can ebb and flow. Even if there's a full-time job, I actually found that because I was 3 years into the business when I took this 40-hour-a-week contract for 5 months, it was much easier for me to balance them both than if I was like still in my first year of business.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's the thing. It's like, we could feel like, oh, we have to go back to work. We failed at our business, or, oh, we have to get another job because like it's not working. But it's like, if we just kind of flip that a little bit and say, no, like I'm choosing to do this because what that does is it gives us peace of mind that allows us to put on the business hat, put on the self-employment hat and feel okay about it. Because I've tried other businesses in my early 20s, mid 20s that didn't work. And part of it was I was going about it and said I was so desperate when really what I needed was to get a job and pay my bills.
Yeah.
And like build the business.
Yeah.
So, and it's hard now because if it is your only thing, it can be like you're worrying about the next bill to pay while trying to build your business. But it takes time to kind of like
to get there.
Trust a little. Like there's a lot of trust and faith. And I tell my therapist, luckily, has private practice. So she like fundamentally understands, but we talk a lot about, it's like, it takes a certain level of delusion.
Yes.
To like believe that it's going to work out.
Yeah.
And I do need to be a little delulu to just be like, okay, no, like maybe I'm not paying myself this week and I'm paying my team. To be fair, I'm also 3 years into business, so it's a little bit different, but I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not paying myself and I'm paying my team, but like, it's because we have this thing. It's like very intentional and strategic. So, but I'm also a little delusional, just like, no, I wouldn't want to do anything else.
I feel like it's important to have a little bit of vision, and you need to have you have to have that voice that says, yeah, I'm the person who can do this. This is me. I own this. I'm the person who can do this. So the workshop's coming up and you're going to cover a tremendous amount of ground. I think for me, what I'm excited about is sort of that beginning stage can feel really overwhelming. Executive function being an issue that I'm worried about. Talk me through a little bit about the workshop and what we can expect in terms of just how do we start? Yeah.
So I have to give credit where it's due. So about a year ago, I brought on another career coach to the team, Caitlin Fisher. Caitlin, they're amazing. So I have to give credit that they were the vision behind this workshop. So they've actually been building out the presentation and the topic and everything. So I want to be clear that everything I share is from their noggin.
Okay.
So, of course, it's a collaboration and we've both been self-employed, but I just want to make sure Caitlin gets their flowers.
Absolutely.
With the Entrepreneurial Horizon Workshop, this is great for folks who maybe you've been building something, you've like just kind of started, or you've had something and you just feel like you need a little calibration. Or folks who are thinking about something new, or maybe they're in a place where job search isn't working out, or their job doesn't feel good. You've been wanting to explore self-employment. Maybe you have like a whisper of an idea. And this is a workshop in which we go through a sort of core framework around the idea that, like, when we think of business planning, oftentimes it's this very like rigid step-by-step plan. I took a business course in college that was like, they taught you how to make a business plan. And I remember just feeling like it just sucked the fun out of everything.
Yeah.
We kind of just like threw that out.
Oh, I love that. That's good. Yeah, because we need that spark. We need a little bit of spark.
Instead of the idea of like a rigid step-by-step plan, you think about where you're going and your horizon, your entrepreneurial horizon. Where are we heading toward? So we don't actually need to know every step that is included. We don't need to know steps 1 through 100. We just need to have an idea of where it is we're headed, so we know what's the next step to take that's towards that. And that kind of becomes a barometer of like, is this getting me closer to that or further away? What's working well, what isn't working well for us, and how we kind of want to curate the self-employment experience for ourselves and what that all looks like. There's going to be a bit of like envisioning what that future could be, but also just like, again, kind of figuring out those next steps. I find that with clients that are sorting out self-employment, the struggles are pretty similar, where it's like I'm thinking of 30 different things that need to be done and I don't know what to do first.
Yes.
But then at the same time, I'm worried about, you know, if I don't have a boss, how do I stay accountable?
Yes.
Am I going to be able to motivate myself to work? How do I manage my time? How do I give myself grace, but also get things done? We'll also talk about some of the harder parts of self-employment, like balancing, the need to make money with just the sort of struggles that come with self-employment and getting started. It's like it's a little bit of a ramp. We'll talk a bit about regulation of regulating sort of that stress of or anxiety around comparing yourself, imposter syndrome, things like that, as well as rejection sensitivity, because, just like job searching, where we get rejected applications or rejected interviews, things like that, there's rejection, if not more, that will come with self-employment of a failed pitch or a client that didn't book with you, or low sales. And so we'll kind of talk through some of how to navigate that. And it is very much like the ebb and flow of self-employment, and just learning how to ride the waves and just focus again on that horizon and where we're headed. Like for a long time, I didn't want to, something with marketing, as I'm sure you know, is that you have to repeat yourself a lot. And I was like, that's really boring.
Yeah, I feel that all the time.
You kind of have to.
Yeah.
Like you kind of have to. And I remember there was this one, I think it was when I ran a group program a few years ago, I was like sending out so many emails and I was posting about it all the time. And there was just so much marketing.
Yeah.
And it's like omni-channel marketing. And I remember getting on a vibe check call, which is like the free call that clients can do with us. And I was mentioning this program to someone because I thought it would be good for them. And I was like, well, yeah, you've probably seen, my emails and posts. And they were like, yeah, I might have seen something. And I was like, you might have seen something. Like I've been posting so many times a day.
Yeah,
and it was just a reminder that like we are like the fraction of content that people consume. But even running workshops, like I would host a workshop. And then at one point I was like, why don't I just run this again? And then I don't have to do the work again.
Yeah.
And it's already made. And pocket that, because that repeat everything you do, because you might not, it's like in my mind, I was like, well, these are the 30 people in the whole world that wanted to be on this workshop and no one else would want to go because they weren't on this the first time.
Yeah.
And time and time again, when I repeat workshops like a couple months later, it's like way more people enroll than were even the first time.
That is the one thing I miss about working full time in a collaborative atmosphere is, you know, with my ADHD, I really liked having I liked having somebody I could go brainstorm and spark with and get into flow state with. And then once we'd both hit that point and we got what we needed, then we disperse and go do the things that we're each really good at. 100%. I miss that a lot.
Yes.
But, you know, you find your way.
Yeah. And that's probably also on like the, you know, number 3 concern people have when they're self-employed. My partner has the same thing. He's a creative. He works in video production and he's just like, I just want a team. I just want someone else to like turn around and talk. Usually it's me and I'm like, I'm busy.
That's the thing.
Like, talk to me in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I've had the same issue. And for me, it's like co-working sessions have been huge, like just virtual co-working. Going to coffee shops is great for body doubling or libraries or things like that. Luckily, I have a partner who at the current moment is self-employed and consulting, so we can kind of go back and forth. But yeah, kind of doing it on your own is rough. So that's, I think, like as early as you can get into a co-working group. I know like Hey Fam does co-working
yes, Hey
every
Fam's
other
great.
week.
I'm a big fan. Yeah.
I was just on their session. I like for the first time went last week. So I'm like, okay, that's in my calendar now. I'm going to go every 2 weeks. And just finding like people to do that work with. I even see on Facebook and on Threads, people here in Philly will post and say, hey, I'm a self-employed creator or I'm self-employed or whatever. Like, I want someone to co-work with.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, even if you don't really know anything about each other's jobs, it's still kind of interesting to be like, what do you think of this as someone who's like an outsider?
Yeah. Well, and it's to that point, I've got some former colleagues that are now in similar positions.
Yeah.
And we'll have brief co-working calls where we sort of can talk through different things and then work together on our own.
I love that.
And that makes a huge difference because it's like that spark is still lingering. So it's sort of, you have that familiar feeling, but you can still kind of do your own thing. So it's nice to have all of these options and varieties, but
And depending on the work that you do, like I think especially for creatives or people who work in marketing, things like that, like you can form a collective where it's like maybe one of you is a writer, one of you is a designer, one of you works in Pinterest strategy, the other works in digital media strategy or something. And it's like, you can kind of just like refer people to each other or like bring on a client who's like, oh, I want this and this. And then you get to work together, but you still do your own thing. Workshop is next Thursday, July 16th, 6:30 Eastern. It'll be virtual, $18. Optionally, you can add another $9 just to help with keeping our costs low. And you'll get the replay and a bunch of resources. You'll get a copy of the transcript, a copy of the presentation. We try to make it really accessible so you have everything you need to refer back to. I also really encourage screenshots on these calls. I'm like, screenshot away.
Yeah, that's amazing.
You've paid for it. Just take it.
Seriously.
My thanks to Liora for taking the time to talk with me today. I always learn something new when we talk. As they mentioned, the event is on July 16th, and it's only $18 to register. There will be a replay and resources for you to walk away with afterwards as well. I'll be there, and I hope to see your name in the chat. For more information on Colorful Futures, the event, and Liora and the work that they're doing, check out the description below for more information. And while you're there, if you're interested in working with me on coaching or helping your organization become more neuro-inclusive, or even speak to your employee resource group, let me know by sending me an email, also in the details below. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out my other video with Liora while you're here about the hiring process and more. Thanks for watching.